All my life, my mom made sure I knew I was an accident, a mistake she had to live with. She used to say it half-jokingly, like words couldn't cut if they were wrapped in a laugh. But every time she said it, something in me stopped believing I mattered. Then one night, everything changed. My older brother, Ethan, her pride, her favorite, collapsed on the kitchen floor, pale and gasping for air. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't a burden. I was a blood type, a kidney, a solution. And when the doctor said I was the perfect match, I realized something cold. Love in my house was never about who you were. It was about what you could give. Would you save someone who never saw your worth? Would you let guilt make your choices for you? And if love only comes with conditions, is it love at all? The morning after I agreed to the surgery, the house was silent. No one looked at me like a daughter, more like a solution wrapped in skin. Mom made coffee like it was any other day. She didn't say, "Thank you." She didn't even say my name. But her eyes were softer, her voice quieter, like she was pretending this was love. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that giving her what she needed would finally make me enough. People came by to bring casseroles and flowers for Ethan. Nobody asked how I was doing. I heard them whispering, "She's such a good sister." But if they'd looked at me closely, they would have seen it. The fear hiding behind my calm face, the question that wouldn't leave my mind. Was I saving Ethan, or just proving I was worth something? That night, I found Mom crying in the laundry room. It was the first time I'd ever seen her cry where no one could see. She didn't know I was standing there, watching her whisper Ethan's name like a prayer. And I realized, even now, even with everything I was giving, I would never be her first thought. The night before the surgery, I couldn't sleep. I lay there listening to the hum of the house, Mom's soft footsteps, Dad's quiet cough. For the first time, I felt powerful and small all at once. Tomorrow I'd give up something I could never get back. And maybe, just maybe, I'd finally be more than the burden she said I was. Hospitals have their own kind of silence. Heavy, unnatural, full of waiting. The morning of the surgery, I watched the sun rise through the glass, its reflection warping against the sterile white walls. Mom stood beside me, pretending not to shake. For once, she didn't speak. She didn't have to. Every look, every breath between us said the same thing. This is the price. I wanted her to hug me, tell me she loved me. Not for what I was about to give, but for existing at all. But she just adjusted my hospital gown and said, "You're doing a good thing." It was the closest she'd ever come to saying, "I'm proud of you." They wheeled me toward the surgery room, and everything felt too bright, too clean. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and fear. I caught Mom's eyes one last time through the glass as the doors swung shut. She looked small then, her face pale, hands pressed against the window like she was afraid I might disappear. For a second, I saw something real, regret maybe, or guilt. But it was gone as quickly as it came. Maybe she was mourning Ethan already. Maybe she was mourning the daughter she'd never really known. They said I'd be asleep in seconds. The anesthesiologist's voice faded, and I remember thinking, this is what it feels like to vanish. The room blurred, all white and humming. And I wondered if Mom was out there pacing, or if she was with Ethan instead. Maybe she didn't even notice when my eyes finally closed. I tried to picture her face, not the angry one, not the disappointed one, but the face of the mother I wished I had. I never found it before the darkness took me. When I woke up, everything hurt. My throat, my side, my chest, even breathing felt heavy. I blinked through the blur, expecting to see Mom by my bed, but it was empty. No one sat there. The only sound was the monitor beside me, steady and cruel. When the nurse finally came in, she said the surgery had gone well. Ethan was stable. Everyone was relieved. I forced a smile, but deep down, I knew. Relief wasn't the same as love. Later that night, I heard laughter down the hall. Mom's voice, light and alive for the first time in weeks. She was sitting by Ethan's bed, holding his hand, telling him how brave he was. I wanted to be angry, but mostly, I just felt hollow. I pressed my hand against my bandaged side and whispered, "You're welcome to no one in particular." Maybe she'd never say it. Maybe she didn't have to. Because now I knew love in our house wasn't something you earned. It was something you traded for survival. The first week after the surgery, no one said my name. Everyone talked about Ethan, how strong he was, how lucky he was to have survived. I sat there on the couch with a blanket around me, stitches pulling every time I breathed, listening to them praise the miracle that came from me. Mom smiled at everyone, her arm wrapped around Ethan's shoulders, and for a moment I thought she might glance my way, but she didn't. That silence was louder than anything she could have said. That's when I realized I hadn't been saved that day. Only he had. At night, I'd hear them laughing in the kitchen, the clinking of dishes, Ethan's jokes, Mom's soft laughter. I used to love that sound when I was little. Now, it just reminded me of everything I wasn't part of. I stayed in my room, tracing the bandage along my side, feeling the faint throb where a part of me used to be. Every heartbeat felt like a reminder that I'd given something they couldn't see, something they didn't want to. A few days later, Mom handed me a tray of soup and said, "Take this to your brother." Her voice was soft, almost kind, but it didn't sound like love. It sounded like duty. I carried it upstairs, my body aching with each step, and when Ethan opened his door, he smiled at me. "Thanks," he said. Just one word, and somehow that tiny word felt warmer than anything Mom had said in weeks. For the first time, I saw him. Not as the favorite, not as the reason for my pain, but as someone who didn't choose any of this either. That night, Ethan came into my room for the first time in years. He sat on the edge of my bed, quiet for a while, then said, "Mom told me you didn't even hesitate." I didn't know how to answer. The truth was, I had hesitated. Not out of fear, but out of longing. I wanted her to ask me differently, to need me differently. "You shouldn't have done it," he whispered, eyes wet. But he didn't understand. I didn't do it for him. I did it because I wanted to stop feeling like nothing. Weeks passed. The scars healed, but something inside me didn't. I started walking to the park alone after school, just to breathe air that didn't smell like antiseptic or silence. Sometimes I'd see mothers with their kids, laughing, hugging, being loud without fear of being a burden. I wondered what that kind of love felt like. Maybe I'd never know. But for the first time, I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt free. Like the part of me I'd given away made space for someone new to grow. Someone who finally saw her own worth. Months passed before anyone noticed how quiet I'd become. I still did my chores, still said "Good morning," still smiled when people looked. But something in me had changed. Something my mother couldn't recognize. I didn't flinch anymore when she raised her voice, and I didn't chase her approval like I used to. It's strange how peace can come from giving up on something you were never meant to win. The distance between us wasn't loud. It was quiet and cold, like snow that never melts, just settles deeper with time. Ethan was getting stronger every day, walking around like nothing had happened. Mom doted on him, made his favorite meals, laughed at his old jokes. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me, though, just for a second. Like she was searching for the right words but didn't know where to start. I wanted her to try. I wanted her to fight for me. But all she said one night was, "You look tired, Lila." And maybe that was her way of saying she saw me. But she didn't. Not really. I started spending time after school in the library, the one place that didn't feel heavy. Surrounded by silence and stories that weren't mine, I could breathe. I'd write in a notebook sometimes, not about what happened, but about who I wanted to be. A girl who wasn't afraid of being forgotten. A girl who didn't need anyone to tell her she was enough. I wasn't there yet, but every page I filled made the distance between us feel a little less painful. One evening, I came home to find Mom sitting alone on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen. The house felt different, smaller somehow. She looked up and said quietly, "You don't talk to me anymore." I almost laughed. All those years, I'd been shouting for her attention without words, and now she noticed the silence. I wanted to tell her it wasn't anger anymore, just emptiness, but I didn't. I just nodded, walked past her, and went upstairs. Sometimes, silence is the only way left to tell the truth. I used to think forgiveness was something you gave to make things better. But now I know it's something you give so you can move on. I don't know if Mom will ever understand what she took from me. Not just the kidney, but the years of feeling unwanted. But as I stood outside under the first snow of winter, I finally felt lighter. Not because she changed, but because I did. Sometimes, the only way to heal from being unseen is to stop waiting for someone else to open their eyes. The night everything finally broke began like any other. Mom was folding laundry in the living room, Ethan was upstairs on his phone, and Dad was pretending to read the paper. But something about the air felt heavier, like all the unsaid words were pressing against the walls. I don't know why I started it. Maybe I was tired of pretending. Maybe I just wanted her to see me. "Do you, even love me?" I asked. My voice sounded small but sharp, cutting through the silence like glass. Mom froze. For the first time, she looked at me like I was someone real. Not a problem, not a favor, just her daughter. For a moment, no one spoke. Then she said it. "Of course I love you." But it didn't sound like truth. It sounded like habit. I stepped closer, voice trembling. "Then why did it take losing him to see me?" The question landed hard, heavier than either of us expected. She opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out. Just a faint gasp, a single tear she tried to hide. I realized then that she didn't have an answer, because maybe she didn't know how to love both of us the same. Ethan came downstairs halfway through. He stopped when he saw us, me crying, Mom shaking, Dad silent. For the first time, he looked between us and realized the truth that had been hiding in plain sight. He whispered, "Lila, I didn't know." I looked at him, my brother, the one I'd saved, the one she'd chosen, and said softly, "It's not your fault." And I meant it, because it never was. It was hers. It was always hers. Mom started to cry. Not the kind of crying that asks for forgiveness, but the kind that finally admits defeat. She said, "I never meant to make you feel unwanted." And for a moment, I almost believed her. But the damage was done. Love isn't something you can patch together after years of silence. I told her, "You don't have to mean it to hurt someone." Her eyes widened, not in anger, but in understanding. Maybe, for the first time, she saw the cost of her own love. When the house finally went quiet, I sat on the porch staring into the night. Behind me, I could still hear Mom's quiet sobs, Ethan whispering something to her I couldn't make out. I didn't feel victorious, just free. The truth had hurt, but it had also cleared the air. Maybe someday she'd try to fix it, and maybe I'd let her. But for now, I finally knew my worth didn't depend on her love. It was mine, always had been. The days after that night felt strange, like the house had exhaled for the first time in years. No more pretending, no more careful smiles, just honesty, raw and heavy. Mom kept her distance at first, moving quietly around me, like I was something fragile she might break again. But I wasn't fragile anymore. I'd said the words I'd been swallowing my whole life, and they didn't destroy me, they freed me. For the first time, I could look at her without needing her to love me back. Ethan tried to talk to me more after that night. At first, I didn't know what to say to him. He was still the golden child, but now, I could see that he never asked to be. He carried guilt in his eyes, even when he smiled. One afternoon, he said quietly, "I wish she'd been there for you like she was for me." I didn't answer right away. Then I told him the truth. Me too. And that was enough. Because for once, it wasn't pity. It was understanding. Mom started leaving notes. Short ones. Small apologies folded beside my breakfast or tucked into my school books. Proud of you. I'm sorry. Thank you. I didn't throw them away. But I didn't answer either. I didn't know how. Part of me wanted to believe she meant it. The other part was still protecting the child who'd waited too long for those words. Healing doesn't come with a single apology. It comes in quiet, consistent moments. And maybe, finally, she was starting to learn that. One evening, I came home late from the library. Mom was sitting on the porch steps waiting. The porch light flickered above her, and for once, she didn't look angry or tired, just human. "Can we talk?" she asked. I almost turned away, but something in her voice stopped me, so I sat beside her. We didn't fix everything that night. We didn't say all the right words, but she said something I'll never forget. "You deserved better from me." And for the first time, I believe she meant it. By the time spring came, something between us had shifted. She still wasn't the mother I wished for, but she was trying, and that mattered. One morning, she made pancakes, the smell filling the house. I walked into the kitchen, half expecting the old silence, but she smiled and said, "Sit down. I made your favorite. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't redemption, but it was real." And for the first time, I didn't feel like a burden in my own home. I just felt home. Years have a strange way of softening even the sharpest memories. I used to replay that night in my head. The questions, the tears, the silence that followed. But now, when I think about it, I don't feel anger anymore, just understanding. Maybe Mom did the best she could with what she knew. Maybe I did too. Time doesn't erase the past, but it teaches you how to carry it without letting it break you. Sometimes that's enough. Ethan and I talk all the time now. He still calls me kiddo, even though I'm grown. We laugh about small things, never mentioning that winter, or the hospital, or the nights we all pretended to be fine. Maybe we don't need to. Some wounds don't need words. They just need time and the quiet promise that you're still here, still choosing to stay in each other's lives. That, I think, is its own kind of healing. Mom writes me letters sometimes. Real letters. In her neat, careful handwriting. They're not long, just small pieces of her heart she's learning how to share. Sometimes she tells me about her garden, or a new recipe she's tried. Once, she wrote, "I hope you know I'd choose you now if I had to." I cried when I read that one. Not because it fixed everything, but because it meant she'd finally seen me. Last month I went home. The same walls, the same creaky stairs, but everything felt different. Mom hugged me at the door, really hugged me. No hesitation, no stiffness, just warmth. For the first time, she didn't say, "You look tired." She said, "I missed you." It was simple, but it was everything I'd ever wanted to hear. Maybe some things don't get erased, but they can be rewritten, word by word, touch by touch. Sometimes I still touch the scar on my side, a small, curved line that reminds me where pain once lived. But now it feels less like a wound and more like a signature of survival. I used to think love had to come from them to mean something, but I've learned that love can start inside you. Quiet, steady, and entirely your own. I forgive her. Not because she earned it, but because I finally understand. Healing isn't about who hurt you. It's about who you become after.